Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Late the W podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mahal. Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, all of that fantastic jazz. If it's your first time joining, make sure you follow on social media at Late the W pod on all of that. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, we're active on all of those. So without further ado, let's sound the horn and get into this episode.
The pitch from Acevedo.
Swung on and line down the left field line for a base hit. Fly ball, gap, right center field. And
Double him up at second.
Luke is going back to the 1-8 track. Get out the right, running Mustard Grandma. It is grand salami time.
To the American League Championship Series for the first time in 24 years.
Hello, and welcome back to the Light the W podcast. As always, I am your host, Mahal. And happy Thursday. Mariners baseball is around the corner. First spring training game is tomorrow. And we are ready to go. Mariners make a small sort of move, bringing back Mitch Garver yesterday. And I haven't had time to prep for a Cole Young episode. So we're going to talk about Garver. We're going to briefly touch on Bryce Miller and what he talked about in his media session yesterday, because there were definitely some interesting tidbits in there. So that's the plan for today's episode. Probably going to be a little bit shorter one. We'll get into full episodes next week again. So without further ado, let's get into this edition of the Light the W podcast. All right, let's start with Bryce Miller. So Bryce Miller had media session, I think 2 days ago. I listened to it yesterday. And Bryce Miller talked about what went wrong last year, why he didn't get surgery. And he also talked about how he adjusted some of his pitches and what his offseason looked like. He felt really good about his offseason. That came across powerfully, strongly, all of that. So I think if you want one takeaway, it's that he felt really good about his offseason, put in good work, feels good, and is ready for the season. For Bryce, last year he added a cutter, and it didn't seem really at all work out. So this offseason, he took that cutter, adjusted it, and then sort of polished it and made it something that he thinks is going to be an actual weapon. It was not. It was not a weapon last year, to say the least. And he talked about sort of just getting a little bit more depth with it, getting some consistency. He talked about how he struggled to be able to spot that pitch. And that was a thing sort of all year for Bryce last year, was struggling to spot pitches around and across the board. He struggled to be able to locate fastballs at the top of the zone, which is where his fastball plays the best. And it caused him to struggle alongside the bone spurs that he has in his elbow. He also talked about with the elbow and the bone spurs specifically that he took an injection in the middle of the season that felt like it sort of fixed it. And he talked about how that's sort of going to be the solution and how it hasn't had any pain since he took that. And that if it starts to have that again, him and the training staff think that another injection should totally just make him feel good once again. Onto the cutter once again, though, we talked about it. The cutter was not very good last year. He didn't throw it a lot as well. He only threw it 18 times, likely just because he didn't feel that good with it, and he wasn't able to spot it, and he couldn't really throw strikes with it. So there's not a ton of numbers-wise that we can look at with it, but if he can get that pitch better, that's going to make a big difference. He also talked about adjusting the sinker, which makes a lot of sense. Opponents slugged .517 against that sinker last year. He talked about just sort of, getting that to have a little bit more movement, making it sort of stand out a little bit. But the biggest thing he mentioned was that he's going to adjust and change his slider grip once again. He's talked about multiple times how he's changed his slider, but he talked about Brian Abreu's slider specifically and how that had a really, really high whiff rate last year, and he wanted to try and use that grip and see if it would work for him. He says that he has some similar metrics to Abreu's slider, and Abreu is a two-pitch guy. So if he can get that slider, that's going to make a massive, massive difference for him and his arsenal. If you want to look at Abreu's slider, He threw that pitch 48% of the time last year, and it got a 46% whiff rate. Opponents hit just 193 and slugged just 290 against it. This is a pitch that is going to move a lot. It has a lot of vertical drop, has additional horizontal compared to the average around the league. If you want to look at his baseball savant profile, I recommend taking a look and looking at that movement profile because it gives you sort of a shaded box with the league average. Abreu, his slider moves vertically more and horizontally more than that average box. It's like diagonally down from that. So if Bryce Miller has any sort of, resemblance of that slider, that's going to be a massive, massive thing for him because as a guy that throws heavy fastball and that's his best pitch, having a true, legit off-speed pitch to be able to throw off of that, let alone multiple, would be big for him and would allow him to be able to be a better pitcher than he was last year. He already has a splitter that was really good 2 years ago and was solid last year. Opponents hit better against it, but it's just they hit better against everything. 2 years ago, opponents hit just 148 and slugged just 225 off of that splitter. So if Bryce Miller can, get that splitter back to the 2024 self, get the four seam back to the 2024 self, and then you add this slider that sounds like it might be a really promising weapon, then you got three really legit pitches that are going to be nasty. Along with that, he also has a sweeper that's produced some solid numbers. It was a lot better 2 years ago than it was last year, to say the least. Again, that's the case with everything, though. Opponents did not have an extra base hit against the sweeper last year. He didn't throw it a whole lot, but that is worth mentioning, and that's going to be more horizontal sort of movement, whereas the slider is going to have more vertical drop. Speaking of vertical drop, he also has a knuckle curveball that he adjusted slightly, and he said that he is going to have a little bit more drop, a little bit more vertical movement, and that's sort of the plan for the knuckle curve. So be able to differentiate from the knuckle curve, the slider, the sweeper, the splitter, all of these different pitches, be able to have a bunch of different weapons that he feels confident in using. And the way he was talking about it, it sounded like he felt, confident in these pitches, felt like he was going to be able to use these pitches, which all of those things are good. Like, you want to be able to be confident. You want to be able to, feel like you are going to be able to throw your pitches in any situation and have them do exactly what you want them to do and be successful pitches. So he, is at the point now where he's looking at his offseason, looking at his season coming up, and he's able to feel good about all these different pitches and feel good about using them in different situations and being able to have Cal call them in different situations, being able to use the cutter more than just a handful of times. That's going to make him a better pitcher, going to make him more dangerous. It's going to be harder to predict what he's going to throw, going to be harder to be able to hit him. And he's a guy that, he's pretty predictable. He's going to throw a lot of fastballs. So if he can get off of that fastball, that's going to make the fastball play up. It's going to make him a better pitcher, going to allow those off-speed pitches really to be able to thrive with so many of them potentially being successful. I'm really high on Bryce Miller, if you can't tell. So if Bryce Miller can go out and have a good season, I will be really happy. And I think I had him as the third, probably best pitcher in this rotation at season end when me and Jeff did the starting pitching preview. I think it's entirely likely this guy is a top two pitcher in this rotation. And is able to get back to what he was 2 years ago, which was a sub-3 ERA guy and a sub-1 whip. So this is potentially a really dangerous weapon, and we've seen what he can do when he is right. And if he gets right here, we can see some really fun stuff from him. Mentioned it in the open. Mitch Garver is back. Mariners signed Mitch Garver to a minor league deal. Let's talk about the minor league deal first. So why is it a minor league deal? What does that mean? He would make just about $2 million if he does make the team, makes the roster out of camp. That is no guarantee, though. With a minor league deal, they can just sort of, not have him on the major league roster and it's not going to cost them anything. That said, what does it say that, one day into full roster workouts, about a week into pitchers and catchers, that they're like, well, we've seen Andrew Kisner, we've seen Johnny Pareda, we don't feel great about them, let's bring back Mitch Garver. And that's no shade to Mitch Garver because Mitch Garver is a better player than both of those guys, and he makes sense even if they didn't, see things that they didn't like. But more so, I think that says something that, there wasn't something that stood out where they were like, well, maybe this guy can, figure this out. And in camp, they just didn't seem to see it. It's hard to know what it is. Maybe the pitchers didn't like how, Kisner was receiving pitches, stuff like that. I will say that I saw an interview with George Kirby. Maybe it was Bryce, one of the two. And they were talking about specifically Kisner receiving pitches. So, and Kisner sort of giving him the backup catcher role. This might have been before Garver, but still something that is of note, something of interest, something to think about. Mitch Garver has spent the last 2 years with Seattle, his age 33 and age 34 seasons. He'll be in his age 35 season, entering 2026, should he make the team. And he was really good before he came to Seattle. A 142 WRC plus in 2023, a 139 in 2021, and a 100 in 2022. 22 and 23 were both in Texas. He was an 89 WRC plus in 2024 and an 86 in 2025 when he officially was just the purely backup catcher. In terms of what he is defensively, he's not any sort of standout guy. He's not the most amazing or even a good defender. He was below average in blocks, caught stealings, and framings, as well as pop time. His pop time was in the 4th percentile, so not very good at all there. He wasn't qualified as a hitter, but, struck out a lot, whiffed a lot, didn't chase a lot. He just wasn't really able to make contact, and I do want to see sort of if his bat speed has dropped off a lot, because it is, you don't know for sure if that's going to necessarily impact it. But there is that sort of potential for that happening. So 2025, Mitch Garver, his bat speed, 71.8 miles an hour. 2023, bat speed was actually slower, so he's increased his bat speed a little bit over the past few years, but he hasn't been able to hit. 2023, he didn't chase at all. The 98th percentile. His strikeout was just the 36th, then he was above average in terms of whiff while walking in the 90th percentile. Since then, he's still walking above average, but not quite at the same rate, only 10% walk rate last year, where it was 12.8 in 2023. Mitch Garver's not an everyday player. There's no guarantee he makes the roster. So, I do think that it's worth thinking about, worth looking at him, that, there's potential maybe that his bat has a little bit of an uptick, but it does feel unlikely. And it says a lot that all he could get was a minor league deal back in Seattle, that they didn't feel great about it. The rest of the league didn't feel great about it. It makes sense. He was a 627 OPS 2 years ago and just a 640 OPS today, or last year. And he had 430 plate appearances in 2024. We talked about when he first signed with the Mariners, and God, I do not want to go back and listen to what I said when he first signed with the Mariners, because I think I was just basically saying that he rakes. And he, in fact, did not rake with the Mariners in his first 2 years. And his strikeout rates have gone up. He went from 23.8 in 2023 to over 30% in 2024 and 27.5% in 2025. He just really has not been the same guy at all. He's not hitting the ball very hard. He's just not been the same guy. His hard hit rate was okay last year. It took a tick up from the year before, but, not good squared up rates in 2024. His barrel was just basically average. His hard hit was below average. The barrel went down in 2025. Launch angle sweet spot was just terrible. And he hasn't been that good of a hitter, really, in general. And he's just hitting a ton of ground balls. On top of sort of, why is he struggling? He's striking out more. He's whiffing more, so he's not making much contact in general. But when he is making contact, it's been nearly a 36% ground ball rate both the last 2 years. It was below 30% in 2023. 2022, when he was average, it was 34%. And in 2021, it was about 31%. So those ground ball rates have all gone up, which means the air rates have gone down, which means less fly balls. And with that, when he is hitting the ball in the air, it's a lot of pop-ups. It's a lot of just pure fly balls. You want to look at line drive rate is one that I love to look at, because when it's going in the air, those are the most likely three things that are going to occur. It's either going to be a fly ball, line drive, or a pop-up. And in 2023, his line drive rate was 26%. That dropped to 22% pretty much the last 2 seasons. Both fly ball rates have gone from 33 in 2023 to 30 and 31. In pop-ups have been kind of somewhat consistent around 10 or 11%. Garver's not been a good hitter. He's not going to be any sort of standout player. You shouldn't have any sort of expectations for him. But he is a backup catcher. And he, in some senses, he's an okay backup catcher. He's a lot better than what they had. And against left-handed pitching last year, he was slightly above average as a hitter, WRC plus of 107. So he is, playable. He had a 718 OPS against left-handed pitching, which, not great. But if you need him in a pinch, or if you need to start him, and there's a lefty on the mound in the weekend, that's sort of where you're going to see him get used. And we'll be able to give Cal a couple days off, get him off his feet, let him get a DH day. And again, there's no guarantee that Garver makes this roster. I think he's probably the favorite now for the backup catching role, but no sure thing at all in that sense. That's all I've got for today's episode. Mariners bring in Mitch Garver, backup catcher. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Just gets a minor league deal. We'll see what happens with that. It'll be something to watch all spring. He'll get a lot of game time with Cal at the WBC coming as soon as next week. Cal will probably be leaving sometime next week. Not totally sure when. And I'll be back Tuesday. I got a lot of commentating to do this weekend. Got 3 play-by-play baseball games this weekend. Got a softball game Monday. So we're going to be busy, but I will do my best to get an episode on Tuesday about Cole Young out and ready so that we can get, back into sort of the flow state. It's been a busy week for me out here in Orange, California. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Till next time, my name is Mahal. Go M's, and peace.